Greetings. I'm Addie Banks, and welcome to Let's Talk Race Now, where we talk to people from all walks of life, sharing their racial and ethnicity truths. I believe that everybody, regardless of social rank, position in the community, or ethnicity, must be heard in the solving of America's race relations solution. So let's talk race now. Today, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Kwame Salter. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed.
It's my pleasure.
Mr. Salter is heralded as a successful Black American man, doing the American dream the way it was intended. He was born in Louisiana, and at the age of 7, his family became part of the Great Migration, headed north and arriving in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His father left a position as principal of a Black school to work for Hill Company, hope I pronounced that right, a large truck manufacturing company, because finding a teaching position there was difficult. Kwame, his sister and brother, attended integrated schools, which were 70% white and 30% minorities, mostly Black. At that time, Milwaukee's Black population was roughly 10%. Early in his life, Kwame Salter took an interest in the human condition and made a vow to change things. He was a campus activist, community organizer, political leader, and was later elected to the Madison Metropolis Board of Education. As an undergraduate at the University of Wisconsin, with a student population of 5,000, there were 12 Black students.
That's at the University of Wisconsin Whitewater, not Madison.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the clarity. Nevertheless, Salter earned the respect of peers through his achievements and leadership skills. They looked to him for instruction, enlightenment, and guidance. Clearly, they knew that he had something to offer. After graduating magna cum laude, he worked at the university and earned a master's degree in education.
At the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Yes, okay, great. With continued studies, he is a dissertation away from a PhD. Salter taught in the metropolitan Milwaukee school system and became an adjunct professor at Concordia University in Chicago, teaching MBA classes. Working at Kraft Foods Company, beginning in 1986, Salter was hired as manager for recruiting and affirmative action. He worked there until 2008, ending his career as senior vice president in human resources, global supply chain. Up the ladder with 7 positions between those two. Salter's outstanding resume of experiences include international travel. In his role as Senior Vice President, HR Kraft Global Supply Chain, he traveled the United States and the world, including Russia, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Brazil, Germany, Mexico, Austria, France, England, Belgium, Costa Rica, and Australia. Salter is a man with the knowledge to inform us. He has something to say and authored 2 books, Striving While Black and Black Over White, Being the Boss When It's Black Over White. His books were born out of a need to validate what every Black leader knows, that racism toward Blacks in leadership is real. Further, they attempt to air out some of the pernicious perceptions and beliefs that operate to make the position of leadership for Blacks unnecessarily challenging and often untenable. Salter writes that his goal is to share what he observed and learned about being a successful Black leader, with strategies for Blacks who are tasked with leading employees who question their suitability for the role of being their Black boss. These are insights he gained through incredible mentors and from his elevated view as a senior vice president who had a powerful seat at the decision-making table. Now that is powerful. Mr. Salter heads the Salter Consulting Group, LLC, and lives in Florida with his wife. He is father of 4 children and has 6 dynamic grandchildren. Again, welcome, Mr. Kwame Salter.
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I do appreciate it.
Well, let's learn a little bit more about you.
Okay.
A man with that kind of resume. I want to know about your early familiars. What was your world like growing up in Louisiana and Wisconsin? How did you spend your childhood time? What makes you smile when you think back to growing up?
Well, my parents met at Southern University in the 1930s. So my children and grandchildren are the 4th generation of college students. What I fondly remember is that as my mother and father were professionals in teaching, we were raised partially by our grandmother. And so a lot of my values that were instilled in me were instilled by her and reinforced, of course, by my parents. She was a dynamic, small in stature, big in presence person. She was respected by both Black and white communities, probably more feared by white communities, but respected nonetheless. She was a woman who did not bite her tongue. She was a woman who walked ramrod straight. She was a woman who looked you in your eye. She was a woman who never, as I said, parsed her words. She told you what she saw, and whether you could handle it or not, that was your problem. But she would never mislead you. She would never undermine you. She would never denigrate you. She would always give you insights to be a better person. And she reminded me consistently that I was different, that as a Salter, I had to carry myself a certain way. She also said something, and I can summarize this way. She would always remind you that the only time you see obstacles is when you take your eyes off the goal.
Oh, that's grand. So as a young lad running around,
I was, yes, I was very
tell us about that little boy.
I was a bad little boy. I got into a lot of stuff. I got a lot of what back in the day they called whoopings.
Whoopings.
Yeah. And I would say 98% of them were deserved. I was just always into something.
In addition to your grandmother, who were the influencers in your young life?
Well, I wasn't, my grandfather passed when I was 3 years old, I think. But he was a minister. He was a traveling minister in Louisiana. He had different churches, and you go first Sunday, second Sunday, third Sunday, fourth Sunday. My mother tells me he was a gentleman and that my grandmother handled all the business, and he would always bring whatever contributions he got to her. She handled everything. My mother always said, "You're like your grandfather. Money doesn't mean anything to you." Yeah. And it doesn't. It really doesn't. To chase money is a fool's errand. Precisely because what it said was follow your passion, not the money. Follow your passion.
Absolutely.
If you follow your passion, the money will chase you.
Mm. You have alluded to the next question of the influence of adults in your life that directed your path.
My mother, much like my grandmother. In fact, my grandmother had 9 boys. She adopted a girl. Well, when my father married my mother, of course, she became my grandmother's daughter. And she studied and learned at the knee of my grandmother. So it was consistent. My mother was very much like my grandmother.
So did that make it difficult moving to Wisconsin?
I had no idea what was happening. I was just like another piece of luggage as far as I was concerned. It's like nobody asked me. Uh, they just we got on the train, my sister and I, and I remember vividly. But
Thinking back to the communities that you grew up in, would you assess them as being racist or not, and why?
well, the fish is last to be aware of the presence of water. So when you say racist, we walk through racism every day. It is not something that sits outside of society. It is intricately integrated into society. It is the society. It is the culture. So to say, was it racist? I was just a young lad just trying to get along, trying to move on. Yeah, we had interactions with police officers, black and white. I'm not going to say they were all white, but some of the people, some of the police officers who harassed us most were black, and I knew what they were trying to do. But see, they had carte blanche because they're in the black community, they're black police, and they could do anything to us. So what could we say?
Is this in Wisconsin or
Milwaukee. This is in
okay?
Milwaukee. Now we're in Milwaukee.
Okay.
So, and then we had the white officers, of course. I remember vividly, we stayed across 20th Street. When you cross 20th Street, you're in a mixed neighborhood. On the other side of 20th Street, starting 19th Street, there's black people. Every day I leave the playground from playing basketball and walk across. Every night, police would stop me. Where are you going? I said, going home. You don't live over there. I said, yes, I do. One night they stopped me, put me in the car, drove me across town to a drugstore, pulled me out, stood me in front of the guy and said, is this the one that robbed you? The guy said, no, this kid is too young. No. So I looked at him and they said, okay, get the hell out of here. I'm going, I got a 10 o'clock curfew and my mama didn't play. And so I had to walk home. I got home about 11 o'clock. I told my mother, and of course she called the office and they didn't do anything. But that's a vivid memory because I thought that's so arbitrary. No description. I mean, I remember I'm fast forwarding years later, I'm at a shopping mall and police stopped me and says, excuse me, we have some questions for you. We're looking for a person, fit your description. I said, what's the description? He said, black male. I said, man, 5'11". I said, I'm 6'2.5". How can you miss that? I couldn't have grown that fast. Well, sir, we're just doing our job. Your job is to stop any black person in a shopping mall that's predominantly white. Okay, got it. But I got to tell you, none of that stuff I internalized because I realized they are the sick ones. I am not. My father always told me, my father helped me with this. He said, look, Would you get angry with a man that you knew was mentally deficient? No. He said, then you have to understand that racism is an illness. He said, you got to treat them clinically.
But
So
it's an illness that kills.
Right. But he says you got to, well, that's the whole different topic. I mean, we got to talk about our community too, about killing. So, my point is that the difference is that the type of murder and maiming and oppression is state sponsored by white people. So we don't have any opportunity to seek redress. Okay. I mean, we don't even have an opportunity to seek redress when some of these Black terrorists in our communities are robbing our mothers and grandmothers. So if we call the police, we may end up getting arrested as the complainant. Isn't that an irony? So where do we go?
Well,
But
as you say, go ahead.
My point is simply this. Yeah, I was aware of it. I had fights, you know, at that age, you know, the way I handled you calling me a nigger, I just beat you up. It was simple. I was just, you know, if you keep calling me that, I keep beating you up. All right. But as I got older, I realized that I can't let them control me. I can't let a word control me.
Tell me about your father's difficulty in Wisconsin getting a job as a teacher.
Well, we moved and he applied to work in the school system, and they said no, there were no jobs in the predominantly Black schools, but he could be a substitute teacher in certain schools. And he was like, well, you know, I really want to teach, because he had worked at the Heil company, the one you had mentioned.
Heil, okay.
And so they said, well, if you got a master's, that would improve your chances and increase the opportunity, the probability of getting a job. So he got a master's. And well, he eventually he started teaching at Lincoln High School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay. Tell me about your college campus experiences, friendships with other ethnicities, and with so few Blacks on the campus, what was like on campus?
Well, Whitewater, Wisconsin is a very small little town. I think it's west of Milwaukee. And the way we got there, I was supposed to go to Southern. He said, well, you know, Whitewater's got some federal funds. And so we go to Whitewater, 5,000 students, 12. And of the 12, 8 of them came from my high school. So it was odd, only because, you know, in a high school, it's a much smaller setting.
Mm-hmm.
So 30% of us at high school. So, you know, we always felt we had a presence. In fact, Whitewater, when I got there, still had a law in the book that required Blacks to be out of town by sundown. Mm-hmm.
Sundown town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Of course, with our
And what year was this?
64.
64.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the first thing they would claim is that we don't invoke this, but it's there.
But it's there.
In
case you need it.
Well, whatever their purpose was, for me, it's there. The very presence of it is insulting. And so that's why I go back to when you asked me about the difference between Black on Black crime and white on Black crime. White on Black crime is state sanctioned, you know, and Black on Black crime is looked the other way. You know, they're killing each other. Whitewater was fascinating, but what it did for me was that I could focus because there were no distractions.
Well, there's that.
There was no distractions. So I came as a basketball player. I was moved to the varsity as a freshman. And then when, as a sophomore, the coach said, I can't decide who the starting five will be, so we'll let the team vote. Guess what happened?
What happened?
They didn't vote for me. And I was probably the second best player on the team. And so I played for like 4 games. I remember at Beloit, my last game, he put me in. I got in, I got the ball, crossed half court, hoisted a long shot, hit it. Coach calls timeout, told me, sit down. It's a bad shot. I said, it went in. So the next week, I just walked into the coach's office, gave him my shoes, said, I'm done. I had been playing basketball since I was 12 years old. It was hard.
Yeah. And did that spark your college activism, or were you activists in college?
I was an activist from day one. I called all the students in and I said, look, we need to start a society. And Lucille Hargrove, I'll never forget. And she was from Madison, and she said, I'll work with you. And so we got 2 or 3 of us. And so we had to come up with a name, and we came up with the name of the group called Alpha Omega, the beginning.
Alpha Omega.
The beginning, the end. It was hard for me. It was hard for me to get a lot of the students engaged. And so that initiative floundered because they just wanted to party. And I understood that. So 3 years ago, I'm told, you have been awarded the Distinguished Alumni Award. I'd already won the Outstanding Recent Alumni Award in '86. So the Distinguished Alumni Award, there are only 9 people in the 150-year history that has won both awards. So they asked me, who do you want to introduce you? And they said, your old English professor is still here. He's still alert. I said, do you know the story behind him? I wrote a paper once, and he came over and he said, you didn't write this paper. And I said, yes, I did. He said, there's no way you wrote this paper. In fact, I'm taking it to the dean. Fine. So he goes to the dean. I guess the dean tells him, this guy had like a 3.6 average. He comes back, Dr. Burrow, he comes back and apologizes. And I said, okay. He said, I'm really apologizing. I said, okay. He said, you walk around here like you're carrying the weight of your people on your shoulders. I turned to him and I said, I am. So I said, when they asked me, did I want him to introduce me? I said, no. But I wanted Fannie Mae Hicklin, who is a PhD, brilliant woman. She just died 2 years ago at 100 years old. She introduced me. She said, I always saw you. You're the only student I saw go to the library at 10 o'clock and come out at 3. Because her office looked over the library. And she
always
said,
watching. There's always someone watching.
This is what people, especially young people, need to know. There's always somebody watching. You don't think.
And remembering.
And she gave me a wonderful introduction. So
does that somehow validate or vindicate the other experiences there?
It never will validate, nor will it ever vindicate. It is what it was. It was what it was. I try to tell young people, there are times you think that people should feel sorry for you, and they don't. There are times people feel sorry for you, and they shouldn't. What you should always do is focus on your goal. You should always focus on your goal and never be shaken. Just focus on your goal.
Because anything else is a distraction, isn't it?
Right. But as the old African saying goes, to stumble is to move forward faster.
Oh, wisdom. That's wisdom.
Never get upset if you fail. Like I told my children, most successful people are simply successful failures. We just don't get it.
They
we just don't get
fail
it.
to the top. They
We
fail
just don't
all
get
the
it.
way to the top.
You know what happened? And we just don't get the message we're supposed to stop. I
Oh,
pray
absolutely.
we don't get the message. Everybody said, you fail. No, no. I go back to what Nelson Mandela said. I never lose. I either win or I learn.
Let's talk about racism as an adult. And I
Yes.
know you have shared some of your stories. As a father, husband, community activist, how did you experience racism as a young man beginning your career?
Well, it was always this doubt. You know, this is part of the tool of racist. I don't care what you do, there's always doubt. And if you exceed their expectations, then you become one off. Oh, that's Addie. That's Kwame.
The
But the rest of them
outlier, the
are outliers.
outlier.
Who's outlier? And my point was, I'm not an outlier. I'm just persistent. Now, the thing about racism is an environmental pollutant. And people need to treat it like we treat climate. This is a pollutant. This is destroying people. And you know, when people come in and they ask me, do you seek white allies? I go, no. Because ally to me, they're victims too. And so what I'm trying to tell them is, look, you're a victim. See, I don't focus on civil rights. I focus on human rights. Civil rights can be legislated. Human rights can only be exercised. So I say to white folks, join me in this fight for human dignity and human rights. Because in that case, you know, Malcolm X, just before he was assassinated, he was pushing to take our case to the United Nations as a violation of human rights. And every time I see our country go over talking about some country's human rights violation, I say, how in the heck can you, with a straight face, go anywhere and say anything about human rights violation when for 400 years you've kept the heel of your boot on our neck?
Kept.
Mhm.
Tell,
So,
tell, tell me about those committees and organizations that you have served on regarding race relations.
well, I try not to get into those things because they generally don't amount to much. The current furor and excitement over diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's a setup. And the way it's set up is that we give one Negro a big job and a title and a lot of money, and the rest of y'all just shut up. And I always said to them, that feeds one family. My objective is to open the gates. And the other thing I'm saying, you appoint the victim to solve the crime. Now, how are we going to do this? So we're supposed to solve the crime. And I've always proposed there should be a white male required to head up diversity because you know where the bodies are buried. You know where the tricks are. Okay? But now we become the flag catcher, the explainer, the justifier. Oh, my company's good. Oh, my company's this. My company's that. Your company ain't done nothing but giving you $300,000 to be the flag catcher. Now, I'm not saying the initiative is wrong, but when I speak, I tell them, what other initiative that's been around for plus 50 years and has never gained traction would still be funded? There's no other initiative. In corporate, no. Either you deliver or you don't. Why is it so hard to gain traction with this? Because we are willing co-conspirators to distract people as though there's progress being made. You go on LinkedIn, you see all that. So-and-so just been appointed senior vice president of DEI. I'm saying then your career trajectory has been shortened. You're put in a place while other people are running right past you, getting the big jobs, and you're sitting in this DEI job. Where's the career path? Where do you go after that?
There's another factor that I have speculated about.
Mhm.
Today, Blacks encounter discrimination and the pitting of other ethnic groups for a diversity position and inclusion that finds us sharing space with others who may be less entitled
No,
to
they're not.
positions.
Right here, let me explain this. Here's what the role that Black people play. We shake the tree and everybody picks up the fruit. Okay? So all the other ethnic groups, they're white adjacent until we start making a case. Then they say, us too, us too. But we're out there shaking the tree. We're out there fighting. We're out there being shot and killed. Okay? And so we have to be very clear about what's in our best interest. If they want to become part of this movement, then they have to show up. I just saw in the news this Filipino woman who was stopped in Alaska and pulled out a white privilege card because she couldn't find a driver's license, and the cop let her go. You can check that out. A white privilege card. It's supposed to be a joke. It's not a joke. There is white privilege. But what I say to white folks is, what is your privilege? The only privilege you got is you're better than me because you ain't Black.
About international racism, you have been to many countries around the world. What has that experience been? Name
Same
a country and tell a story.
Well, I was in Russia, and I was in a little town called Pokrov, Russia. I went to St. Petersburg, and I also went to Moscow. Pokrov, Russia was just like a little town in Mississippi. Poor people standing on the corner, rat-infested apartments. It was bad. And you could see the disparity between the very rich young communists after they took over. They gave themselves all the business. And these old, gnarled-fingered men and women working their heinies off. It was sad. Did I experience racism? I don't know, because I don't respond to it. I was me. I remember being in Bulgaria, in Sofia, Bulgaria, at our chocolate factory, Spalgate, Bulgaria. And everybody just loved me. And the guys with me said, they really like you. I said, charisma travels. It traveled. I remember being in Bulgaria, and I'm in this limo, a bus, and I look out there, and there's an African, Black. I mean, we use the word Black and given the range of complexion in our community, but he was Black. And I found myself looking at him, just looking, and I caught myself and said, oh my God, what am I doing? He's a human being. Then I thought, I wonder how Africans reacted when they saw the first white man. What is that? So I can honestly say I did not experience any racism, or maybe I wasn't paying any attention to it, because I cover every square inch of the ground I stand on. I don't walk in expecting to be treated any way other than respect. I don't go in like, no, I don't do it. And in Rome, I remember going to a restaurant, and there were most of the chefs were Africans from Ethiopia, some parts. But I remember one, he wanted to take a picture with me. But I can honestly say that I didn't. If they were being racist, I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't get it. I don't know what you're talking about. Because hey, look, I walked in like when I was in Brazil. I remember interviewing people in the plant, and my director, my Latin American director, said, Kwame, the reason they're not talking is because your position is such a big position in their mind. And in this country, there's a separation. And you're walking around and say, call me Kwame. That's the American thing. They don't do that here. They know their place. Okay. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, you asked them how's it going, how they like working here. They go, he said, because you're a senior VP from the corporate world headquarters. And you're walking around here like you're just a guy. You're not a guy. And that taught me something. That's cultural differences. You know, Brazil is a very young country. And you see a lot of Black Brazilians.
Mm-hmm.
Very young country, a lot of racism there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's based, what Brazil does, if you make enough money, you can become white adjacent. Okay? If you make enough money. But it's still very racist. You know, Brazil literally, at the point when there were more Blacks than whites, Brazil actually gave land to Eastern Europeans to offset Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, no, I can't say I experienced anything. I gave you one example. I was in Brussels, and I walking over to the little casino to see what their little casino was like, and there was these they looked like they were either they were Indian. I don't know if they were Sikh or Muslim, I don't know, but it was a man and his son. And so I'm walking down the street, and this two teenagers driving Belgians start calling them names and stuff. And I walked up, I started moving fast, and I walked up and said, get out of the car, just get out of the car and talk. And they just sped away. They sped away. So the father said, thank you, thank you. I said, do you endure this all? He said, all the time, all the time. I said, what do you do? He said, I hug my child and I try to find a bus station so I can hide. I go, what? So I saw that. That okay. I saw. Yeah. Let's see, Rome, Australia. Now I was in Australia, and I had never seen an Aborigine.
Okay.
You're talking about beautiful people. Just regal.
Really?
Regal. And I caught myself looking at this guy. He looked up at me. I went, oh. Sorry. But he was sitting there, just sitting there, just regal. Yeah, I remember Australia, Brazil, Germany. I was in Munich, mostly in Germany. Austria. I remember going to Austria, and I was shocked because in the hotel, the maid service were all Black or Africans. So, but I learned a lot. You know, the thing I think I'm trying to communicate, no, I scratch trying. The thing I'm communicating is that I'm okay with me. I didn't drink the Kool-Aid. I am sorry. You got me mixed up with some other Negro. Because I'm not the one. And you will find that out very quickly. I know my staff used to say, you never shout, but your words are like hot bullets. I said, well, you know, part of it is if the sound overtakes the substance, nothing happens. So I have to have the sound check all the time.
There you go.
It's a sound check.
There are other dynamics that I am hearing that are often overlooked. We call racism, but actually there is a stratification system in every country.
Yes, ma'am.
That designates those who are privileged and those who are deemed undesirable. You talked about Russia, but in every country. So do you think that if we get to an understanding of those dynamics between ethnic groups and levels of acceptability, then we will learn something about what we call racism.
Oh, racism is real, but racism is a social political structure. I'm not dismissing the presence of racism, systemic racism.
Mhm.
See, we confuse bigotry with racism. Bigotry is just the expression of a frustrated, poor person
Mhm.
or a rich, insensitive person. That's bigotry. Systemic racism is a social political construct
Yes.
designed to keep a certain group down. If there were not Black people in America, they would have to invent a nigger.
There you go.
Okay? Because it's all about money. And if you want a simple definition of systemic racism, it's access to privileges.
Access to privileges.
Yeah. So your white skin gives you access to a certain bundle of benefits, so to speak.
Very much so.
All
Let's
right,
talk.
go ahead.
Let's talk about racism in corporate America.
Yeah.
Specifically, your first position at Kraft was manager for recruiting and affirmative action. Tell us what that was then, and in hindsight, how that worked out.
I need you. We brought you here because you are respected in this community by white folks and Black folks. He said, so you have a celebrity status here. He said, here's what I want. He said, we need to do better. He said, what do you call us? Hunkies? I didn't say anything. I just looked. No. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him.
Yeah, best.
He said, anyway, we could change the demographics of this community. We're the second largest employer after the University of Wisconsin in the state government. You have the power. I'm going to give you the front door. That's recruiting. I said, the front door? He said, the front door. You will determine who comes in here. And then he tied it to affirmative action. He said, now you got both levers. And I worked it too. I brought 19. I brought one season, I brought in 19 tech people from Grambling. I went to Tuskegee, Grambling, all the historically black
Yes, you
colleges.
did.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I remember one guy walked in. He ran the employee market, Tom Parker, and he said, "Yeah, Kwame, you know, people around here saying you just promote and support Black people. You know," I said, "I support and promote anybody who's got talent." Yeah, but your emphasis, I said, yes, my emphasis is on Black people. Your emphasis is on white people. I said, you got not one Black person in the market. And that's a cushy job for union employees. I said, until you get a Black person in the market, you got nothing to say to me. You got a Black person.
What is affirmative action today?
It's called diversity. It's just got a different label. It's diversity. But affirmative action, affirmative action was a lightning rod because of the quotas. And, you know, and all like, oh, you got quotas, you got to have so many. And Kwame, what do you think about quotas? I said, I'm against quotas. They said, you're against quotas? I said, yeah, because if we are the most qualified and you got a quota of only 10 of us and 15 of us are qualified, you gonna stop at 10? Heck no. They go, what? They didn't know what to do with it. I said, no, I ain't got no quotas. I want you. I said, we got more people who are skilled in more things, and then I accept a quota. I got to stop once I hit that quota. What if I want to go past that quota?
Your books.
Mm-hmm.
So much included in your books. The American dream while Black, corporate culture, racism at the top. Tell us what you want the world to know about what you have written.
Well, the first book, Striving While Black, I think you have it there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have it.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it, it's called a playbook for the seriously ambitious. And I said, getting to your goal without losing your soul.
Hey.
That's the subtitle. On the back of the book, it says, warning, do not buy this book if you're not serious about your career, if you are looking for excuses justifying your lack of career mobility. This book is not for you. This book is only for seriously ambitious. Don't buy my book. Go buy a comic book. Now, I wrote this book for people who are coming into corporate who didn't have anybody before them. See, my father couldn't get into corporate. So I'm saying a lot of the so-called white employees had uncles, aunts, fathers, brothers who came before them and showed them the rope. This is my version of a pocket mentor. So, and then this one is, okay, you're in there and you're doing well. In fact, you got white people reporting to you. What's that like? And I'm pursuing my passion to share my experiences. If the goddess of wealth and riches wants to reward me, fine. If you don't, fine, I'm cool. So, my objective is to share insights, share experiences, to say you don't have to repeat some obvious mistakes. I explain in one book that, you will get the policies and procedures manual, but that's somewhat misleading because it doesn't tell you what the organization is like. I said, the only way you know what the organization is not like is when you violate a norm. Norms are never written. Only time you know you violated a norm is when you violated a norm. Then they will call you, hey, come here. You shouldn't. I talk about America's going through stages of grief. With us, because we're frustrating to them. Here you've exploited us. Here you've oppressed us. Here you arrested us. Here you killed us. And yet we still are here. And there's a quote I share with people. They tried to bury us, but they did not realize we were seeds.
There you go.
This is a seed you're looking at of Moses Salter, Mariah Salter, Samuel Salter, Reba Salter. Seed.
Let me ask you this. Race-related income and wealth gap. Black Americans lag behind whites and other ethnic groups.
Surprise, surprise.
Despite our history of overcoming an achievement. Since building wealth is generational, how many Black people do you know that have benefited from significant inheritances?
I don't know any offhand.
During the Black Wall Street era across the country, wealth was accumulated to build many thriving communities. Integration allowed Black civil rights and dignity, but negatively impacted Black businesses and communities. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, you just talked about something my daddy talked about. Since the worst thing that happened to us from an economic standpoint. He said what it did was gave you rights, but not enough money to even exercise those rights. So you get the right to go to the Hyatt, but you ain't got the money to go to the Hyatt. And the other thing I want to explain is how do we define white? White is not a scientific or biological construct. It is a social political construct. In fact, I've read books on when Jews became white, when Italians became white, because they were not considered white.
That-
But anyway, so here's white, a social political construct. So what we have are minority groups vying to be white adjacent or white leaning. You know, it's a sad state of affairs. Now, I'm not saying all minority groups or all members of minority groups feel that way. I have a proposal, a modest proposal. This is the time for us to get all minority groups together and say to the NAACP, now your title makes sense. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Okay.
Well, that leads into my next question. There are attempts to resurrect Black Wall Streets. Do you think it's possible in this globalization environment?
No, it's not. No, that was a moment in time. Greenwood and Tulsa, Williamton, North Carolina. You know, that was a coup. They just overthrew the Black government there.
Mm-hmm.
No, things are so inextricably linked globally now that you're not going to have, a community that's going to have enough money to move the needle. So we have an obligation to do something. Remember, I said race is a social political construct, and it's designed to keep us in our place. Now, the other thing is that if you think about, some people visiting us the other day, and the guy was talking about they had found $750 million in gold, and maybe that could help with the reparations. And he asked me what I thought about reparations. I said, they give reparations to the Japanese, but it was $250 and something like that. It wasn't that much. But I said, you know how much conservatively they would have to pay us for the labor they stole? Conservatively, $8 trillion.
$8 trillion.
$8 trillion. I was working with a group that studies this. That's conservative. We built this country. And we're the most loyal, patriotic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Fought in every war.
Oh, yeah. If you believe in the Most High, if you know there is a force greater than us, there's a reckoning that's happening right now. My concern is for my people who act just like the people who oppress them.
Question. We're wrapping up, but
right.
I always ask, do you really believe that humankind can overcome racial and ethnic antagonisms, and why?
I don't know yet. It's an open-ended question. The jury's still out. Every time I think they can, I look at Russia attacking Ukraine for no good reason, and the rest of the world letting this guy kill people. Just kill people. And it's all ethnic, because I was in Ukraine. I was at Kiev, Ukraine, Trashkin. I've been to Ukraine. And I saw the hatred they have for each other. Just the hatred. This is in 2004 I was there. Just the hatred. I was there because the Ukrainians did not want to hire a Russian engineer. I said, no. Diversity for us means cultural diversity as well as ethnic diversity. And then guys started explaining to me what the Russians had done to them. I realized I couldn't side with him and say you could not hire the guy. But I said, what you're saying is moving. It's hard. It's heartbreaking. It's heart-wrenching how they treated the Ukrainians. So when you ask me, do we have the capacity? I'm not sure. Are we by nature just a species that attacks and kills each other? Because most creatures don't kill each other unless it's an accident. And if they're in a fight and the other, yeah. But I'm saying, lions don't kill lions.
Yes.
Okay, unless there is an accident. And if you're fighting, if those creatures are fighting and one turns and shows its underbelly, that's a surrender and they walk away. The other thing is that they could have a fight one day and the next day is over. There's the human species, I'm not sure. I don't know what we're programmed to do. We're in free fall right now as a species. The whole world is in turmoil. People are under extreme mental stress. It is an amazing collapse of leadership. So I don't know if humans have the capacity. I believe we do. I believe that our better angels are still there. They're silent right now. But I believe, like I say to people, I will help anybody who I feel is being marginalized or ostracized unfairly. I will help.
Tell us, Mr. Salter, what 5 things do you believe can impact improved race and ethnic relations?
Well, eliminating dismantling systemic racism, number one, which is going to be hard because it's so integrated into every facet of society.
What specific things have you thought of?
Well, I remember you said the 5 things. Dismantle systemic racism.
Okay.
Address sexism. Correct the disparity of income.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're moving towards a point where, see, rich people now, it's all distractions, like you say. Over here, like my wife said, watch this hand while I'm in your pocket. Watch this hand. So we have to say to people, we're moving to a society where there's truly the have and the have-nots. There used to be a middle class buffer. To be middle class today, you have to have at least $1 million just to be middle class. Because if you go back 30, 40 years and look at what middle class was, the same amount of money that you were making then would buy the same bushel and bundle of services that $1 million would buy now. So it was 3. And finally, I think we have to believe in a spiritual renewal. I grew up going to Catholic schools. And I'm not religious, but I am very spiritual. And you've heard that before. And by spiritual, I mean, I believe that there's a force greater than us. I believe that collectively, we all have pieces of God in us. We fight it.
On the subject that we have been talking about, are we seeing race relations improved, modeled in America?
In some respects, yes. It's incremental. And in fact, I would submit we are actually turning this thing around. I would submit that. But it's like, you have to have a trained eye like a scientist. When water becomes ice, there's a quantum leap from one substance or one state to another. But if you don't have a trained eye, you don't even know that the molecules are solidifying until it becomes ice.
There you go.
Right? So I'm saying we're so focused on the outcome, we're not watching the process. We're making strides. I'm gonna tell you something. You compare us to any people on the planet Earth, and nobody has made as much progress from the degradation and the humiliation of slavery in 400 years that we've had. A black president, a black vice president, mayors. We are amazing people. And all the time with people shooting at us.
Moving targets.
Yeah, we are
Thank
amazing.
you so much. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your stories. You know, I noticed that at the end of your emails, you have stay positive, build a better American dream.
That's right.
You are clearly hopeful about what we can become. And I
Right.
thank you for modeling that for us and
Well, I
in this discussion.
Well, I thank you for giving me a platform to share. It's
Tell us where we can find your books.
Amazon. It's on Amazon.
Thank you
Thank you.
so very much to receive and reflect on. And I thank you so much. It's not often that we're able to glean from the wealthy fields of knowledge, insight, passion, and experience from the likes of Mr. Kwame Salter. I hope that this will be the first of many conversations that I will have with them on varied topics, and I look forward to sharing them with you.